our exhibit called Game Time, which moves you through decades of board games. That's a really nice one. That has every one of the 53 toys in the National Toy Hall of Fame are displayed in that train display.
Really?
Yeah, every single one. You'll notice the Frisbee is the sun. That our Barbie is our Statue of Liberty. That you've got, of course, vinyl trains. You'll see Lego people around. You'll see Slinky. You'll see Tinker Toy. The bridge is made of Tinker Toy and hula hoop. You'll see all kinds of things.
God.
We add.
Oh, this is too much.
It's this way.
We have a very elaborate.
Pull them back out.
Sorry. So the two exhibits that you're going to see side by side now. One explores the history of board games, centuries old, and the other explores the history of video games, only decades old. So it's a very interesting dichotomy and synergy between the two. And that's what these do. You'll notice our Candyland-like floor brings you through Game Time, which is our board game. This is a fun little photo op too. Whoever would like to stand by the game pieces. Really interesting things. If you take a moment to look through the cases and you look at the games, you'll not only notice how gameplay has changed over time, but you can get a sense of what social norms were like. If you look at the game cases, you'll see what was socially acceptable. For example, one of my favorite games growing up was Battleship. I used to play that with my brother. And if I go look at the same game that we had in the same game box, all of a sudden now I notice that on the game box, the young man is playing with his dad while mom and daughter, or sister in that case, are doing dishes. Because in the 1970s, that was social norm.
Yeah.
So it's very interesting to see how our society and how much games and how many of these boxes and this artwork and everything really illuminate cultural history, American cultural history. It's very interesting. So we have the world's largest collection of public collection of video games and electronic games and related materials, and we have an exhibit here called E-Game Revolution. If you walk through here, you'll see iconic artifacts that don't exist anywhere else in the world. We have not only examples of the games, but we have the notebooks that the game makers, their notes of how they made the games. And we are able to attach antecedents to the actual game. So for example, my children played The Sims. The Sims is a computer game. It's simulating real life. These notebooks here are Will Wright's notebooks when he designed The Sims. They exist nowhere else in the world. Will Wright gave them to the museum, and our curators, through interpretation and in talking with Mr. Wright, understand that an antecedent like a dollhouse informed the gameplay and what he wanted to evoke out of the gameplay when he created The Sims. So really tying these things together is incredibly important. Ralph Baer created the original home console game. It was called the Brown Box. There's an example of it there, and it later became the Magnavox Odyssey, the first home console game. You see the evolution of these games here. Ralph was kind enough to create one, and a prototype for us to have here, and one that people can play on over there, so they can see how clunky it was to play. You can look at the most recent games here, like the Sony PlayStation, and you can go back and play Ralph's original game back over there, which is the green and white over there. So you can see how those things have come over time. Over here, this case is really cool. I like this case because this case talks about the controversy with video games and violence in video games. And it also explores the fact that before it was video games, the same conversations took place about comic books. Before it was comic books, the same conversation talked about dime store novels and how those were going to impact society because they had people who read them and the content of them really was really putting morality, really pushing the limits of morality. So in every age there was some controversy about a different medium, and it really is like everything else. It's how much you consume of it, and really it's just a conversation that continues over time. Unique things that you can do at the museum also include a floor there, a light space dance floor where you can actually play video games with your body. You can play dodgeball. We have one of the world's only giant Tetris, 2-player giant Tetris games. And if we go around this corner, you'll see that we also have this unique game, which is a 4-player Pac-Man. Again, there are only single numbers of these that exist in the world. You can play them here. This is the first arcade game, computer space. I mean Space War, I'm sorry. I meant Space War. We're going to get you back down shortly. I'm going to point out one more thing for you. The museum's collections are what the museum is, what's our foundation. We're nationally recognized for our collections. And this is one of our most cherished collections. It's one of my most cherished collections. This is a round Monopoly game. It was handmade by Charles Darrow, and it's said to be round because they say that his dining room was round.
Okay.
And Charles Darrow is credited as the man who commercialized Monopoly. He went from this kind of game design and then went to the tie box game design that you see here, and again, all hands-on, that he eventually sold commercially. He put them in necktie boxes, he typed up the cards, and we have one of the very few, I think there are 3 that exist. I think we have 2 of the 3 or 2 of the 4 that exist of this necktie box. We have the one that's in the best condition. And so you see that here, and then you can see how then Monopoly got further commercialized. But what people don't realize is that Monopoly was a folk game that was passed down from generation to generation. And it really started as this game over here called, well, the Landlord's game. So I guess it's over there. The Landlord's game. And the Landlord's game was created by Lizzie McGee, who really wanted to publicize the unfairness of economic monopolies and the disparity in incomes and things like that. A lot of the conversations that you see happening around today. And so what she was trying to do is have the game play so that people could be more equitable in how they shared their dollars. But human nature had it so that people played to win. They didn't want to reallocate the dollars to their friends and neighbors. They wanted to make, they wanted to be the one that had all the money, and that's how the game eventually came to be. So, interestingly enough, there's this John Heap's folk art set that predates not the Lizzie McGee game, but the Landlord game predates this. But Monopoly really became a game that became a folk game that people would create their own sets for. And even though Darrow is credited for commercializing it, there are lots of folk versions. And this version here, this John Heap set, was actually used in a commercial litigation as an example. The Parker brothers were trying to sue a creator of, I believe it was the anti-monopoly game. And they took him to court. They didn't want to disparage Monopoly. They didn't want someone else making money off of a Monopoly game that they bought the rights to. But when they brought this John Heap folk art and said Monopoly's been around way before Darrow made it popular, the lawsuit was thrown out because Monopoly was around. The intellectual property from Monopoly predates Darrow commercializing it. So while they had the rights to commercialize it, they couldn't prevent somebody else from doing something similarly. So it's really pretty interesting. Did we see Mabel here before we go? Where's Mabel? Mabel, where are you? Did we see Mabel? Is she in for fine-tuning? Where is Mabel? I thought she was in here. Oh, wow. We got to take you out. You're going to go to George Eastman House. You're going to love it. George Eastman House is fantastic. Yes.